Hi, Joey. Here's your care package. I really hope, in time, you come to love and enjoy the nuance of Genesis. We hope to usher in a new genre of TCGs with Genesis that focuses on tactical gameplay. As we grow, we will rely on people like you to deliver a quality game that upholds its values. Keep being honest and calling us out when we make garbage. Regards, Austin. It's the first thing I got from the company. And I've had a little bit of an ethical dilemma lately on, do I want to talk about this? Do I want to close this off? Do I want to share my story? And the concern that I have was, is there something bad about, does it come across as just kicking someone while they're down, or just bitching for the sake of bitching, or getting the jabs in knowing that there's not really a response, and all of those things? I struggled with it. It's been a couple of weeks now, and I've discovered that I'm not entirely okay from this. I'm still not. And no, not it's I wish that it would stay. Like, no, this thing has earned the dishonorable death that it's gotten. But there are a lot of people who are looking at it, and who did look at it at the start and say, it's just another casualty from the cutthroat realm of TCGs. And here's the thing. That's not true at all. This wasn't a casualty of difficult times. This was a suicide, courtesy of institutional failure and weakness in leadership. So you know what? We might as well call out some garbage and fucking learn something. No timer. No timer on this one. I'm going to give this one whatever time it needs, honestly. And I'm going to chapter it out because I have no clue if this is going to be long or if it's going to be short. I made an outline. I never make an outline for videos, and this one's 3 pages long, which is probably why I never make outlines for videos. So I don't know what this is going to take. But I'll try to keep it interesting, and I'll try to keep it short enough as best as I can. Try not to go into tangents. I literally have an outline for it. But something also interesting has changed in the last little bit. So I recorded the Cold Open 2 days ago, and I still was kind of mulling over, like, do I really want to do this? And how do I want to do this? And I've landed, obviously, on yes. But 7 hours ago, a post shows up in the official Genesis group that basically says, watch the Genesis Battle of Champions social media channels for more information. At this moment, Asad, the creator of the game, is no longer associated with any social media accounts. Any and all posts moving forward regarding the game don't represent him or the company Haunted Castle Gaming. I am pleased, however, to share with you that this post has been created with Asad's blessing. Now, at the end of Genesis, as with most games that just end, there is usually a community that sprouts up that want to keep it alive in some way, shape, or form. Genesis is no different. And I know that some of the efforts were hilarious, if anything, and a lot of them just didn't kind of click, but it sounds like something did. I can only guess. I don't know. I'm not a part of those conversations. And I'm fine with that. And I'm fine staying that way. However, I'm going to disclaimer, just because it does say that, all posts moving forward don't represent the game or the creator or HCG, and that's not really what this video is going to be trying to do. I want to paint a picture for how this ended, and why this ended, and the things that can be learned from a business side, a fan side, what I learned myself, and as creators, and with the crazy space that this is, there are really important takeaways that shouldn't be ignored. Additionally, I don't want this to come across like I'm trying to save myself here or anything like that. That's not what this is. I made some very clear mistakes as well, and I'll be calling those out. But the thing that I could not get my mind around, even as I was telling myself, like, maybe I shouldn't do this, is that this company ending with just a post that says thanks, bye. And I approved that copy, but I was also pretty insulted by it, but I'm going to get into that. But it's hard to appreciate the idea that the company failing was just kind of the result of the team failing. And I know that's going to be one of those dark things to say, kind of a pass the buck kind of thing, but there's a lot of people that did really well. And we were in a really good direction. And then suddenly we weren't. And it's not that we stopped going in the right direction. It's that we found out how crippled we were. And I don't think anybody really knew that. And it'd be unfair to say the end of Haunted Castle Gaming is just the result of just everybody not being enough. People were enough. People were enough, and we could prove it. So, to that community moving forward, I do wish you well. I very much do. Please do what we don't. And at the end of this, I do have a message for you. Please check it out. It's in good kindness. This is a learning thing. This isn't me trying to necessarily just like bash for the sake of bashing, though some of this is going to get pretty dark pretty quick. Additionally with this story, or actually let me do this. I'm going to skip to the moral of this story also, which is just don't let yourself be abused by passion. I've got little call outs where kind of each one of those is an example of just getting abused by passion. Getting abused by the delusion, the delusion of grandeur, the possibility, the dream. Don't do it. Let things suck and need to change course and that kind of stuff. Don't let yourself be abused by passion. Because a lot of people got hurt here. A lot of people got hurt. And it's not in the ways you think. So here we go. Before we go too far also, I'm going to let everybody know I am leaving certain details out. Not every specific minute little number and whatnot needs to be a part of this in order to kind of understand the story around them. Additionally, I don't exactly have all the numbers. I'm out in Colorado. The company's based in Toronto. I wasn't as close to things as I really wish I were. And for that, I don't necessarily want to speculate on stuff I truly didn't know. And in some cases, some of the stories are not really mine to share. And I'll let those individuals do that if they would like to. So what you are going to be getting is an account of events and things that I experienced as they were brought to me, kind of in the order that they were shared with me, and as I was able to respond to them. And that is its own problem. But just letting you know, like, this is not a 100%, this is everything that happened, kind of tell all, oh my gosh thing. This is what came my way and how I was able to respond and the things I learned from it. So for context, for somebody who has no actual clue what in the world is going on, Genesis Battle of Champions is a tactical CCG, has collectible card game that's real funny if you know the game. The word collectible is funny. It's a tactical CCG that started in, I'm going to safely say 2018. It technically was November 2017, but it really didn't get kind of off the ground until 2018. And for about 3 years, it built a strong core following out in Toronto, just kind of testing its concepts. It had a couple small little sets that came out, just again to kind of prove itself. They all sold. They were all able to sell. And then in 2021, they unleashed I think actually in 2020, they unleashed Jalara 2nd Edition, which was kind of a love letter to those first couple of sets of testing and stuff that really made the cut and changes and things like that. In 2021, they made a Kickstarter. It did $300,000, roughly, $300,000 US, with a hilariously foreshadowing 666 backers. Can't write that shit, can ya? Good job. Or I guess good job. I don't know, whatever. 666 backers. But that was supposed to be the year they effectively kind of hit to the mainstream. That was kind of the goal of the Kickstarter, was like, hey, we're ready to kind of break into other areas of the world. They'd actually already trickled into the United States a little bit. They'd also trickled into Europe, and they kind of bounced around a lot of little pockets around the world. So that's essentially kind of the company. And then a couple of weeks ago, it just ended. There's a post that said, I tried so hard, got so far, and in the end, we're saying goodbye. So how the hell does a $300,000 Kickstarter just like a year and a half ago, how does it say goodbye all of a sudden? Especially with the trajectory that we were on. That's what we're going to chat about, and it's hilariously, actually, what the beer for the day is, because there's a beer for the day, and we're going big. We're going real big. I forgot how big exactly. Right. 13% alcohol by volume. This bad boy is called Cake or Death from Verboten. It's usually my birthday beer. They usually release it around June, which is a weird time for an Imperial Stout. But yeah, it is a chocolate imperial stout with Tahitian vanilla, mix of chocolate husks, and then aged in bourbon barrels. And yeah, this thing's a hoss and a half. But hilariously, the story of the end of Genesis quite literally is one of cake or death. We'll get into that. Glass, also, just because reasons, our mutual friend is the glass for this one, just for, again, reasons. Anyway, so that's the beer for the day, and this is going to be, this one's a sipper. This one's a sipper. And that's why. Oof. Look at that. All right. Cheers. Ooh, buddy. Ooh, buddy. All right. Sorry, that was a whole minute. Anyway, before I jump into kind of where we were as a company, I do want to quickly state what my role with the company was as well. So my role was the head of marketing. I started actually in January 2022. I think January 14th, if I remember exactly. I was asked to kind of come aboard to help out with marketing strategy. And then I was essentially kind of promoted to head of marketing to take kind of over any and all initiatives without having to necessarily go through channels. The contract that I was on was 10 hours a week with it was a $1,500 retainer. So on average, 10 hours a week. Sometimes that was a lot, sometimes it was a lot more, sometimes it was a lot less. Most of the time it was a lot more. And this also included getting reimbursed for anything like shipping on behalf of the company or any sort of travel expenses, things like that. Those were also things that were a part of it. So that was what my contract was. I was part-time, essentially, 10 hours a week, $1,500. And that contract never changed. That was always what that was. And I made the decision to leave kind of before this announcement, and I very well might have been kind of the reason for it. But I actually chose to leave the company on March 24th is when I made the decision. And it was the day that we learned that we got accepted into TCGPlayer. 2022 is a pain in the ass for a number of reasons. Whenever you have a Kickstarter that comes out, you've got that lull right after the Kickstarter where you've got to basically, you wait for the product to get delivered and pushed, and there's not really a lot you can do kind of in the middle. So you try to cling on to like organized play and like, online digital type of things. The issue that we also had, though, is that we were manually shipping things. We didn't go with like a backer kit or an agency. So with that, a lot of the team's time that they could have spent doing other things was actually just assembling the Kickstarter and putting that out and sending that out the door themselves. It was a cost-cutting strategy that I'm going to say didn't quite work, but we got it out there. It took its sweet time, but in that, we were also focusing a lot. In that came the challenge of like, well, we don't have anything for the community to do, and one of the weird things that we did is right as the Kickstarter was kind of ending, the company left the Discord. And I don't understand why, but I get elements of this. But I'll chat about that in just a sec. But anyway, coming into 2023, knowing that 2022 was really hard, and we kind of lost a little bit of ourselves, or at least what the company was 3 years prior that I wasn't a part of. We came up with a couple of key strategies for 2023. The first one was revamping our communication efforts. It's always been a problem with Genesis. And then leaving the Discord didn't necessarily help. The idea with it was to be able to let the fan base react to things on their own without it feeling like the company was looming over them. And that's fair. And anybody who's seen a TCG Kickstarter where like the creator will go on like a band bender as a result of negative feedback, you can kind of see a little bit of the logic behind that. It's a neat idea, I guess, on paper. The problem, though, is that in doing so, it negated the back and forth communication that anybody had with the company. So we literally had a Discord community that was just left to rot. And there was just no communication with them at all. And we were, hoping that they would figure it out themselves. So we tried to fix that. We got ourselves back into the Discord, and we started up something called the Weekly Awareness, which was just a weekly, here's how the company is doing. And we also created regular cadence of social media posting, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for a while, and that worked a little bit. We got some gains from it. We got some confidence boosting. People were a little bit more active, which was great. The social media stuff, like the algorithm was totally hosed. Like I don't know how we had thousands of followers, but like no reach from any of it. no reach, which is an algorithm problem. Like if you don't post ever, you don't post anything that anybody reacts to, no matter how many followers you have, it's just not going to show them. The most important thing to understand about like social media and things like YouTube and whatnot is it doesn't favor the person who's posting. It favors the viewer. They're not going to help you if they already know that nobody's viewing your stuff. That's it. So revamp communication efforts. Second thing we wanted to do was focus on company maturity. This was a 3-tier kind of thing. The easy one was to fix everything. I'm just going to jump to the easy one. Fix everything. The website was a mess, non-functional. The tournament software was a mess and non-functional. The community, not a mess, but non-functional, as I just mentioned. So we wanted to try to just fix and really try to get ourselves back to something that, like, if you saw us and explored us for the first time, you'd look and be like, yes, this is clearly a company that knows what they're doing. We didn't quite look like that off of just what we had. The other two pieces, the company maturity angle of it, was really a lot of B2B, business-to-business kind of things. So the go-to-market strategy that we had was to show that we understood the industry and will stand out through experience and history. Those are things that Kickstarter games can't do. They don't have the history. You can say, I've been working on the game for 16 years, but you haven't actually tried to sell it for 16 years. Things like that. So Genesis being able to say we're 5 years old and we've tested in production and we understand like distro and we understand like local game store partnerships. We understand like the challenges that you go through and we are actively working to correct those or try to combat those. Did great. That was the Dungeon Crawler program. That was appreciating things like product churn and wallet fatigue and like barrier to entry. And we played around with different formats to try to alleviate that. And we took a lot of pride in there's no exclusive rarities as you get into higher things. So like everything was accessible. We wanted to really show like we did this intentionally, so that way local game stores and partners would look and be like, I see you have enough understanding of the industry to see the challenges. And you guys are trying to stand out and you're showing that you can. That did a lot of work. And many of you probably know why, but I'll make sure that it's clear in a bit. The next thing that we did though is we went back to being a B2B. The thing about Kickstarter is that it's a B2C. It's business to consumer. And that's a struggle. That's a challenge. Because you get this whole group of community members who have fallen in love with what you have, but like being able to go to a game store, like you don't have product to sell, you don't have you don't really have a pre-order system. They're like, you've already like taken off the initial customers who were excited about the thing, you've already sold the thing. It's a little tricky. So we wanted to go back to being kind of a pure business to business. The GTM was the kind of first step to that. And we learned a couple things in this process, which the biggest one was that the internet doesn't work as a sole growth strategy. It doesn't. Like trying to turn the internet fandom into people who can make things into physical sales, that's very, very difficult to do. Even Flesh and Blood did not succeed. Actually, thing to learn. We're going to jump into thing to learn real quick because I have like things to learn. So this is a thing to learn. Put it in your notes. Which is that the internet does not set the benchmark for success or failure. It doesn't. No matter how good you look, doesn't mean you're great, doesn't mean you're succeeding. No matter how bad you look, it doesn't mean you're failing. Even Flesh and Blood is a good example of this, where the Flesh and Blood did not succeed because of the internet. It definitely sustained, but the internet was not a growth strategy for the game. The growth strategy was a lot of people coming and doing learn to plays and having like the IRA kits and getting into stores and having that avenue for stores to try the game and find their own community in person and play in the Flesh and Blood. And that's a really important thing to understand. Also things like Discord. Discord sucks for growth. The thing about Discord is that you can't just discover it for funsies. And it's a proactive effort from any individual to actually, I want to go into this and I want to see what's up. And God forbid news is spread through a chat channel, because then I had to show up at the right time. Or you have like your announcements channel. But at that point, why don't you just put something on a website? Discord is not social media. Discord is a bad strategy if you want your community to like try to turn this thing into something more than what it is. And if you need the proof of this, feel free to take a look at any Kickstarter that is out there and take a look at the Discord community, any Kickstarter that was like successful, and then take a look at the Discord community numbers and like the social media numbers and match them up. Monsters Glare is a great example of this one. I was even talking to Terrence the other day. He's got posts with like thousands of views and like a ton of followers, and Discord's like up and lively. 76 people are committed to the Kickstarter. 76 of them. That's it. Internet doesn't mean shit. It doesn't. So part of also going into and kind of respecting that, like, you know, we need the internet to like sustain and communicate, but it's you know, but it's not like our sole strategy. We had to figure out like the in-person thing. So we came up with like sales models and onboarding strategies. We were looking at 30, 60, 90 plans for LGSs. We were coming up with just other ways, like other formats to try to communicate, to try to connect to their respective player base. Like not everybody's competitive, not everybody's casual. So we're like, hey, we have options for everybody, no matter what kind of community you have. So we were focusing a heck of a lot on that. I'll put this one on me. I didn't really put a lot into the onboarding strat. I was really busy learning lesson number 1 about the internet and soul growth strategy. I didn't really know that until I realized how little it was working. I was like, I need to pull back from this. But I was in there doing just a lot of conversations with people, just having a lot of conversations with the community on like the state of the game and trying to get them excited about XYZ thing, and just dealing with just feedback back and forth and kind of being the center of communication all of a sudden from a game that left the server. I popped ourselves back in, and that was also a mistake on my end. But it leads to thing number 2 to also respect, which is that feedback doesn't have to be taken at face value, but it does lead to actual answers. And be okay with that. Again, you know, those discards that just like ban negative feedback, they shouldn't. They should read into them and be like, hey, maybe your idea isn't exactly what we want to do, but how do we take the themes of it, the themes of that, and try to turn it into something very clear and that we can act on, that we know will serve the purposes it needs to. For Genesis, the issue was collectability. Oh God, we sucked at it. It just does. It just did. And the argument was like, people need to want to buy boxes because there still should be a thrill in opening them. I didn't feel that was a great way to like grow a game, but I was definitely turned on to the product needs to be fun to open. There needs to be some excitement. And the thing that I really learned is there needs to be some excitement to being able to get pack support for events. Oh, that one I learned even at the very end of it. I was like, why isn't this working? Because we had people who loved playing the game, but they wouldn't come to events. And it's because the events themselves weren't interesting, because that time, the prize support for dedicating that time to it wasn't good enough. And that's what spice in the packs can do for you. I didn't really realize that till like literally like a week ago. I was like, oh God, oh man. But also in hearing like there needs to be like more foils, there needs to be like XYZ chase thing. It was like, okay, let's dive into what collectability means to all of these people to determine if we need to have like everything be a foil or if there's like a blend. And we picked a blend, and I loved where we landed. But that was a lot of what I spent my time kind of in 2022 doing. I didn't really do a lot of onboarding things. I didn't really focus on it. I was kind of like, hey, let's try to keep the community going. That one's an error on my part. I screwed that one up. The last thing that we really wanted to get focused on, the last real strategy we wanted to get for 2023 was the printing of invasion. This one's weird, and I don't understand why, but for some odd reason, we had to pay for the entire thing up front, or that's at least what I had heard, to the tune of about $80,000 to $100,000 for the print run that we were looking for. We had to pay for all of it at the very beginning. That's not usually how printers work, by the way. Usually you can do like down payments, or you can at least show purchase orders. You can show purchase orders of product after the fact to say, hey, when you print this, there are people who are going to bring money to us, so that way they can get this product, and then I'm going to take some of that money and I'm going to give it to you to pay for the print run. Purchase orders are great things. They're usually how kind of distro also works for like sets that haven't like released yet. You use the purchase order to get into the printer, but for some weird reason, we had to pay for this thing up front. And I don't know what kind of damage was done to this relationship, because what's really weird is the whole reason we stuck with the printer we did was because the relationship was supposed to be strong. So I'm a little baffled at the dick move there. But we also had kind of another issue that like blew my mind as to why this was a thing. And that leads to thing to learn number 3, which is hold partners accountable. I don't care how good the relationship is, but hold partners accountable to things. Fucking period. We had Origins Retail that was printed, and we had 50 promos that were printed on a sheet. Those were my initiatives for things like Learn to Plays and like community champions and referral programs and whatnot. And then on another page, we had 50 other promos. We had 100 promos. And the reason we had them split up is because this guy, this is the first thing I ever made for a company, by the way, was the Angel Retribution. Like, I made that it was like printed as an official thing. The Angel Retribution museum poster. I was proud of this. This took the other half of the sheet, which is why they were split. So we said, hey, go to go to this page and these 50 slots do not print, please, do not collate them, please cut them and send them to us. Instead, they collated them and put them in the booster packs. So I lost a lot of my marketing ability from that. And that was frustrating as all goddamn get out. But we just slapped them on the wrist. Why the fuck we slap them on the wrist for that? Like, that's one of those things that we needed concessions. You guys were about to get cryptic beta. You're about to learn something. And I'm glad that Tanner is holding the printer accountable, at least making a valiant attempt to. But, oh man, hold them accountable. I don't care what your logic is as far, like, I don't care how good the relationship is. If they screw up, you need to call them out on it. You don't have to call them out publicly, like Flesh and Blood, when they had the collation issues and the legendary problem with Outsiders. They said, like, hey, we know there's a thing and we're going to leave it there. They're not going to throw their printer under the bus publicly, God no. But I'm sure that there's something on the back end of some level of concession, be that, cheaper print run next time or speed or something along those lines. Like, we should have held them accountable for Origins retail. We didn't. I don't know why not. But that was definitely holding us back. So as a result of that, we put a heavy focus on direct sales, and we became a sales company for kind of the beginning of 2023 really hard because we were trying to just get money in that pool so we can print Invasion. Courtesy of a thing that I will share later. I wish we didn't do that. But if anything, thing to learn number 4 from this effort is to work smarter, not harder. We worked harder, not smarter. We did the one-to-one relationships with, like, hey, refer a store, and we're going to take those store owners down a sales funnel, and we'll go through like HCT Direct, our direct selling program. We had Distro. We had Fun Again. We had a couple other like little piddly ones here and there, but we had Distro. It existed. But the problem is we had a consignment. We had it through Fun Again. Now, Fun Again works with like your Southern Hobbies, your PhDs, and other distros. So it's not like we were banned from them, but they did have to be a part of every conversation, and it also cut into profits. It cut into margins in every step of the line. It makes sense. Like, they are holding the product and going through the initial shipping of said product. So like, it makes sense, but that definitely held us back quite a bit. And it led to a bit of a dilemma, especially when Fun Again ended up closing their doors. And we suddenly had to create our own partnerships with Distro from scratch. And that was kind of another delay for Invasion. Like this thing has nowhere to go. And that was a big problem. And the thing to understand with Distro is that distribution is a partnership. It's not like you send something to a shop and then stores just order it and then they push it out the door. Distros do market their product. They market through like buy a box program promos, and they'll market through like going to trade shows. They'll market through doing their own retailer summits, and they'll market through magazines. ICV2 is a great example of one. GTM magazine, Game Trade magazine, that's Alliance Distribution's magazine. That is how they communicate their distro offerings to local game stores to get them to buy from Alliance. That's how they work. It's a partnership. Being able to go to a distro and saying like, hey, we are willing to work with you. Okay, now that's a big important thing. And they really gravitate towards that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of like kind of working through that, but we had a lot of challenges with that. But those are the go-to-market strategies for 2023. Get Invasions out the door. We were really proud of it. We were really proud of that product. Focus on company maturity, revamp communication efforts. That's what we wanted to do in 2023. The thing also to understand that's really important to understand here is that the plan was working. The strategy was actually working. Again, the internet doesn't set a benchmark for success or failure, and it was kind of hard to see a lot of what, like, if you were to look on the internet for Genesis, you would not think half of what was going on from a like growth perspective, because like there wasn't like content being made, and there weren't a lot of people talking about it, but it's because we were working on the business side, and we were like more focused on like getting into stores, and not like trying to, like, we weren't exactly pushing the community to create things, and that kind of sucked. It would have been nice, but anyway, so the plan was working. We had organic growth that was on the rise. Discord was in fact growing with people who were curious about the game, and we had avenues for them to play them. That wasn't kind of a thing that we learned later though. Was like we didn't have a good strategy to like get stuff in their hands. They were kind of bottlenecked by our B2B strategy. Oops, fixable, but not with the time we had. But Discord was growing, which is, hey, we saw this, and that was cool, and we want to learn more. And we had stores that were reaching out. They were reaching out, and here's thing to learn number five, I think. I forgot number one. Here's a thing to learn though. Target the employees. Don't target the owners. Owners don't care. Well, they care, but they really want to know, like, how's this going to move in my store? But the employees, the ones who are not working for a lot of money, but are there because of passion and, like, I want to work for a game store. Oh, there's the ones to go after, because they're being the ones who are excited to, like, show other players, and they're going to be the ones who are going to, like, get the product knowledge to be able to help sell the game. But that said, you also need to prepare for the owners. They're going to ask you questions about margins. They're going to ask questions about, like, all right, how, I'm glad, my sales associate is excited about this, but how do you actually move this through? Like, what are your product SKUs? And, what do I need to buy in? And how are you actually going to help me move this product through? You got to be ready for that. And we were fairly ready for that. I liked where we were heading. But in addition to those stores reaching out, we saw pockets of growth and opportunity. We had stores that were buying in. We had stores that were doing, like, learn to play, open houses. We call them open houses. But we had, so in the United States, in kind of the 2 months before kind of the end of it all, we were getting new business in Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, Kansas, Florida, California, Washington, Utah, New York, Arizona, and Virginia. And it's very possible I was missing a few others. But these were actual sales, or they were like ones who were, like, very interested to just kind of do an open house and, like, really, like, in that funnel and jazzed. That was cool, and that was happening again organically. The referral program was starting to finally kick on. We were getting referrals. Osid and Chris, sales guy, kind of new sales guy, part-time sales guy, like, they were doing a lot of, like, kind of cold calls and just kind of introducing themselves, and we were, like, really leveraging that integrity and product knowledge and industry knowledge. It was working. We also had major stores up in the Canada area, like face-to-face games. That was a massive win. They wanted to give us a shot. They weren't going to help a lot, but they at least wanted to give us a shot, and that was cool. We had, sales numbers, we had fluctuations of a couple hundred to a couple grand of new business every week. Definitely not great, but, momentum and things like getting ready to close, and we were able to, like, really find those wins and be like, all right, what has been a good strategy from a sales perspective? Like, we were getting somewhere for sure. Additionally, we had two other big things. The first one was getting TCGPlayer. March 24th, we had a call, and I worked that for 9 months working that account. And I'll be real clear on that, on the conversations with TCGPlayer. What a weird breath of fresh air. I know, right? Probably not what you were expecting. The questions for the vetting questions from TCGPlayer were, I loved answering them. It gave me so much confidence in what Genesis was doing and how we were approaching the market and the industry. It was a lot of, like, what are you doing to grow stores, and it was a lot of, like, how are you partnering with this process? Not just, actually, there wasn't a single question about secondary market. There wasn't a single question about, like, valuing cards and things that would, like, lead to their respective commissions. They very much are we want to partner now kind of company. And meeting with Craig, the director of partnerships, it was very much we want to partner. And they have an onboarding strategy that it's a little bit of pricey. It's pricey. But once you get through all of that, like, you put money where your mouth is, and they partner with you. You guys probably just recently saw this with Battle Spirit Saga that had kind of a site takeover, and there are, like, a whole other things that TCGPlayer does, respecting the reach and the clout they have, and it's honestly kind of money well worth it, in my opinion, in my professional opinion there, and it was really cool. It was cool to get. It's also when I decided to leave the company, though, like, the moment that we're like, yeah, no, there's actually no other vetting. We're just going to talk about kind of what the rest of the process looks like. That was when I was done. And the reason for that is because of the other reason that it worked. This whole thing worked. And that would be the investors. In mythology, Icarus was imprisoned, and he was able to escape his imprisonment through his wings. He flew through the skies, and in flying through the skies to escape imprisonment, he flew too close to the sun. The sun melted his wings, and he fell to his watery grave. In business, the Icarus paradox defines a company that sees success and then abruptly fails. And it's because of that success, the reasons that led them to their success were ultimately the things that made them fail. It's called the Icarus paradox. To me, in my eyes, from my viewpoint, there is nothing to suggest that there were crippling using that word specifically, crippling money issues until about January of this year. I knew that we were like low. I knew we weren't exactly like, we weren't rolling in it for sure. I knew that. We had Jalara 2nd edition print run number 2. That was a pretty big print run. We had Origins Kickstarter, naturally, we had to pay for that. And then Origins Retail, we had to pay for that. Those are some pretty big costs. Those take a lot. $300,000 from a Kickstarter, $200,000 after like fees and whatnot. Maybe, I don't know. That only goes so far. That only takes you so far. But I was still under the impression, like, if that stuff was paid for through, like, a Kickstarter, then any sales of that would essentially be, like, something along the lines of cash positive. And the fact of the matter is that J2 and P2 and Origins Retail, it wasn't selling, terribly well. I mentioned, like, we fluctuated between, like, a couple hundred and a couple thousand, like, every week of new business. But we weren't killing it. We really weren't killing it. And we definitely didn't in 2022, which is why we shifted much more over to that like B2B strategy in 2023 to try to kind of course correct from stuff that wasn't quite working. And that was finding some things out was a big surprise. And we're going to get to that a little bit later. But we had some crippling things that were surprises. The other issue, and one of the other things that was a surprise, and this is something I didn't get until after the announcement was made, was I got a chance to take a look at the sales projections. Sales projection sheets, by the way, if you're not familiar, if you don't do business things, it's a way for you to kind of gauge realistically being the key word, what you're able to do in future quarters based off of what you're projecting sales to be. And those projections often come from, they come from history, they come from like LY last year, they come from kind of what you know about like your current process and what you have in the pipeline, all those things. They come from some sense of reality. I got a chance to take a look at sales projections and projections of things, growth projections, that apparently was a document in 2021, and I wish I had it in front of me, so I'm going to say this is off of memory of it existing, but I don't remember the numbers. And I don't have it because I'm not in the Slack anymore, what was shared with me. And it was wild. I also probably shouldn't share those anyway because, like, again, the numbers aren't really going to matter. However, there was definitely a vibe of Kickstarter will sell itself. And I have yelled about this plenty in temper tantrums and many other things of the idea that Kickstarter is going to sell the product and you're just suddenly going to be able to get in stores as a result. No, that's not a thing. Here we are, though. To be fair to it, we definitely shifted off of it, and there was definitely more of that, like, we got to put in the work, but there was definitely, at the time of the Kickstarter beginning, a Kickstarter will sell itself, and kind of the numbers of growth and sales numbers, that they didn't make any freaking sense. Additionally, there was this weird idea that there was going to be YouTube revenue, that the YouTube page was going to like spike into the like way too many dollars per month for revenue. And it was like, that's not how YouTube works. There was some, for lack of a better term, delusions of grandeur around the Kickstarter, clearly in 2020 or 2021. And I don't know how far that led down into the hell that we dealt with, but like off we went. It probably, if anything, led to kind of some of the reasons that things were printed at the capacities as they were. But there were some delusions of grandeur problems. And this is going to lead to thing to learn number 6. I'm on 6 now. I checked. Number 6, confidence helps build success, but it doesn't create it. I did this in Temper Tantrum too, also, of like the business. And it doesn't matter how many people say your game is phenomenal. We had a lot of people saying our game was great. We still have people saying the game is great. And to be honest, the game is great. It's so good. It's such a good game in so many ways. That doesn't mean it can sell. That doesn't mean it just can sell. That's not a thing. That isn't a thing, and you got to put in the extra work, and you can't just assume. You definitely can't act on projections that don't make any realistic sense, and this is why sales projections are iffy and terrifying, and it's usually also when, like, we miss sales projection shows up, like, at a quarterly stockholders meeting, it just, timber, and down goes the stock price. It's not just because, like, sales didn't hit projections, it's because the company made it clear they didn't have their finger on the pulse of themselves and their own capabilities and the market and the audience that they were trying to reach to. That's why those things tank if you just don't hit projections. But confidence, we had a lot of confidence, and I have a lot of confidence. I have a ton. Genesis does something that no other game can do. It can. And we were able to sell on it. We were able to prove it over and over and over again, which is it has the capacity to reach and excite audiences that don't give two craps about TCGs. They don't. I had a store, Atomic Goblin Longmod. I practically sold the thing on the board game, on the dungeon crawler itself, and I was really proud of that one. I put a lot into that one. I put a lot of personal pride into that one, and I know I kind of mention it a lot because that one is kind of my baby. And it was done with the intent of trying to get past the stigmas. I know my face is kind of contorting. I'm having kind of a bad medicine day. I was trying to like come up with a way to literally combat the stigmas of like wallet fatigue and point of entry, and how do we get non-card gamers into an experience without changing the product and without doing anything interesting. And Dungeon Crawler was my way to do that. And I almost got an entire client off of that alone. I tested it multiple times with people who were not card gamers. In fact, there was only one instance where everybody was a card gamer. And it's also the only instance where everybody knew the game. And every other one, oh man, it was cool. I'm really proud of it. And I'm excited for Genesis's future, because there apparently seems to be a future. I'm excited for it. It can do something nobody else can do. And we proved it over and over and over through the success that we had, the TCGPlayer, and the reaching out and the organic growth and all of that. And then the investors. Let's talk about the investors. Not a lot. So from this point on, actually from the whole thing, but I'm only privy to certain elements of the conversation. So remember the very beginning where I said, like, this is how things were shared with me. This is where we're at. And I'm going to leave details out because some things aren't really worth it. But also there are some things that are very public, and I'm basically going to recap that and then kind of share, this is kind of what actions were going to take as a result and where it all went to shit. So let's talk about February 14th, 2023. There's an interview that Asa does that gets released on the Booster Pack Network. And side note, the fact that the Booster Pack Network and Rand's phenomenal human being, the fact that he's only got like a little bit over 1,000 subscribers is a goddamn crime. Go to the Booster Pack Network if you have any interest in like the business side and like really diving into true history and an appreciation for the space that is TCGs. Not necessarily like to get hyped up about all of the stuff, but if you really want to have good conversations about like ethics and the practicality of things, go subscribe to the Booster Pack Network. For the love of God, it's one of the best freaking TCG business sites, period. It's one of the only ones, period. I'm kind of trying to be the other one, but like things get in the way. Anyway, Asa does an interview February 14th, and this sparks a reach out. A conversation. God, I don't know why I was struggling with that word. It sparks a conversation with a group of investors. Cited they were impressed with the vision and integrity of Osid. Now, we're going to be real fair to a few things, because I know that there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be like a he fucked up kind of thing. There are a lot of elements to the business plan and the model and the vision and the way that this company approached games in the gaming space that are phenomenal. And it's why I put as much effort as I did. It's why so many people put effort into this and sacrificed a lot. There was a lot good, and it was in the best. It had the best of heart. And Asid created that, and that was great. But it's also funny. They were impressed with vision and integrity. And suddenly conversations started. And this was probably about mid-February when it was about when I got introduced to the idea that we had investors. And with the crippling money things, and with hey, we weren't like going crazy in cash, but there was definitely like a need, especially knowing that we needed we needed like 80 to 100 for the invasion print run. So suddenly we have a lifeline, right? Investors are coming in, and there were, to my knowledge, there were no actual investors in Haunted Castle Gaming prior, and I don't know if there are any still. We didn't necessarily have like a cash flow from outside outside forces that were truly interested in us. It wasn't a thing, but now we had a lifeline. The lifeline brings with it three key options at the beginning of the conversations. Number one, fund invasion and see how we do for a while. I said the invasion print product. Oh my god. And I don't have a bias here anymore because I'm kind of done. The invasion product was goddamn phenomenal. And we had to cut it down because of the costs. And what we cut it down to, I think, was better than if we had all the money in the world. Oh my God, I loved how Invasions was going to be. The packs are going to be great. We worked on the collectability thing, and I think we nailed it. Oh man, it was good. And we had out of print things that were going to be in there. It was going to be pretty awesome. So the idea was like, hey, fund and break. We can fund this and see how that does. See how we do. Number 2 was a business loan. It was a business loan. It was a, hey, we'll fund it and then you pay us back. And then the third one was to just buy us outright. Stick us in an umbrella, buy us outright. Those are the 3 that we had. Oh, those are pretty cool options. They're pretty cool options. In addition to this comes the second part, which is the staffing question. As a part of this conversation, as it was progressing through, and there was a lot of positivity. And I still very strongly wish that I had a chance to kind of really speak with them and say, here's the vision, here's what we're doing, but on the same token, kind of not, and that's for reasons we're going to get into in just a sec. I really wish that I had, though, because again, I still feel that Genesis is capable of doing something that nobody else can, and the right team and the right circumstances, it will shock the system, and it will do it in a very healthy, very interesting way. That's kind of brilliant. But with this idea, specifically about the buying the company outright, came the question about staffing. Core team's 4 of us. And there was this thought as the conversation was going that there was a strong desire to keep the team, to keep us. And we all wrote job descriptions and offered up salary requests within a range that we were given. We all offer up salary, but within a range, and those ranges were low. They were low. They were way lower than market needed to be. But we also kind of understood, if you're going to buy something that is, we're not swimming in cash. So you're going to buy something that's a risk. There are elements of things try to offset that. And for me, this was great timing. My contract with Etsy ended in middle February. I've been struggling. I'm still struggling to find work. To find full-time work. I'm getting a couple little things here and there, but I'm struggling. So this was great timing. You're telling me as a contract is ending, I might have a serious opportunity to get a full-time job with a game that, that I've been loving and a company that's been awesome. And, especially doing the things that we were doing kind of at the beginning of January and end of 2022. And oh man, seeing that pay off with a job, that's amazing. Who doesn't want to buy into that? Who doesn't want to buy into that? Right. Around this time, there were other problems, and this is also where I'm going to start sharing some dark things about my own little history here. And I'm going to make it really clear when I'm speculating on data and when I'm not. But with everything that we had, I was really excited about the opportunity. To be able to have a job. In the middle of all this, though, there were some payment problems. Like I said, I knew we weren't cash positive, but there were inklings, there were conversations about the tournament, people who were participating in tournaments. We had a $50,000 circuit, courtesy of Kickstarter, a Kickstarter promise. Winners of that tournament weren't getting paid for a while. I learned that randomly in February. I was like, wait, what? And this was kind of when it started to click for me, uh-oh, weird. But again, I know, sales are going to help with this, but a promise from Kickstarter, I would have expected that money to be set aside. This is 50,000 Canadian, by the way, so not US. But we had a Kickstarter promise of $50,000. Or a $50,000 circuit series, which was circuits, and then we had a $15,000 world championship. That was the Days of Beckoning. That was last November. Thing to learn number 7, everybody, on this one. Prize money is not nearly as interesting as you think. It's not as interesting as you think. And I know a couple of people are going to be look at this and say well, wait a second. You see $1 million prize pool, or 250,000, or 2 million from or 2 or 3 million from MetaZoo. Battle Spirit Saga is at a 1 or 2 million. My Hero Academia was 250,000. Like, whoa, those are big numbers. Those are big numbers. You would think that brings people out. It does. It does, but not nearly as many as you think. It's just how it works. Most games, and this is something that with Flesh and Blood blew my mind when it was like a weird revelation. But George from May the Zoo Be With You made this statement a while back, and it was brilliant, which is a majority to the nth degree, a majority of a player base and a fan base are not competitive players. I go to an event like the Call, or I go to like a Battle Hardened, or I go to like a pro. If I were to go to like a pro tour, I would go with the expectation of not winning dick nothing. I'm not that good. There are people who spend a lot more time really trying to make that a thing. I go for the fun and the thrill of the experience. And that is more important to me than the rest. And that's more important to a lot of people than the rest. Prize money is a marketing tool. Saying that I'm going to put $3 million into a circuit, or $50,000 in the case of Genesis, that's not I'm trying to get people outnumber, or at least that needs to stop being treated as we're going to try to get people outnumber. It's a marketing number of, this is what we can put. This is just what we have to just burn to have people play the game. It's a statement of confidence. It's a statement of where you're at. It's like the Prada bags, or the Tory Burches, Tony, Burt, whatever. It's the expensive things. I'm spending a big expensive thing. This is how we're doing. We're doing fine. It's a statement of confidence. But in the reality of it all, it doesn't really like bring people out. We didn't have like overwhelming. We had $5,000, again Canadian, $5,000 circuits that had 4 people, 8 people. It didn't necessarily make, wait, $5,000 is on the line? I'm going to learn this game. No, that's not a thing that happened. But we still had it. Not a lot of people came out. Definitely didn't help with growth because, again, the internet's not a benchmark for success, and you need a pathway to get those people who are interested into physical stores. It didn't help, but people weren't getting paid for their winnings. They did in the end. We had Patreon that was paying artists up to a point, and towards the end, I kind of learned that wasn't exactly the case either. There were members of the team who were on kind of sweat equity, an actual equity. That's how they were getting paid. For their efforts, which, by the way, don't fucking do that, or at least find a goddamn balance. Find a middle where you got to put something in, but that's a thing to learn later. And the last thing that's really important are that members of the staff, myself included, were delaying payments. I don't know who was doing it willingly, or not, or just like, I can't pay you. I was doing it willingly. I was, from about, October, I forgot it was October or November on, I was willingly delaying payments, wanting that money to go to the Invasion print run, wanting to, like, everything go into the Invasion print run, because I was so confident in that product and in our ability to, like, really rock and roll with it, and TCGPlayer was, like, moving forward, so I can use them as leverage. I went with it. I was like, hey, I'm happy to delay, kind of seeing this being kind of the thing for the future. And feeling confident in that. I owned that. I owned that it was a delay. But also, there's a thing to learn. And this is thing to learn number 8. Use and abuse are not just two different things, but they're both two-way streets. It's in the idea of abuse by passion. The theme of letting your passion abuse you and doing things that you shouldn't, knowing that there's maybe not like a repercussion, knowing that there's not going to be like, anything you might get in return except for like the feeling of being a part of something. There needs to be a balance, but there also needs to be an appreciation by the community, or I'm sorry, not by the community, by the company that recognizes what you're doing and says, we have a way to really appreciate you. Or not. I skipped multiple months of pay. This also included paying somebody else that I hired to help with. This included taking on costs like shipping. This included flying out to Toronto for the Days of Beckoning. I took all of those with nothing in return. And again, I was kind of okay, but like Etsy was paying nicely, so I wasn't exactly strapped for the cash. But I also wasn't expecting to never ever see it the fuck back. And because of certain pieces of information that I didn't have up until kind of this all truly imploded, I feel that there is a responsibility for the company, knowing these are things that I'm doing with certain expectations, to also say, there's no fucking way that we're going to be able to pay you back for this. And they have a responsibility to appreciate, or at least be transparent with that, of the risk that we take, and say, like, if we're struggling enough that this might not come back to you. I feel I feel no matter even if I said like, I'm taking this on as an investment because I believe in this, I feel the response should have been, we're more cash poor than you think, and there's a strong likelihood this investment won't see any reimbursement whatsoever. I had no fucking clue what was about to happen. And when I did, well, if you thought there were problems already, you just fucking wait. This part and the next two after it are going to be hard, I think, for me. I don't know. I haven't really got to talk about them at the level of detail that I'm about to talk about them, especially with how they affected me and how I reacted to it. This did, however, end in one of the worst possible ways, which was a complete mental breakdown. But I'll talk about that one later. So, before I jump into the 3 reasons I left the company, it's good to know that I've got a lot of patience. I take a lot of pride in having a lot of patience and using that patience to try to kind of figure out good paths forward and take, the thing that I like to say is, like, there's no such thing as a crisis. It's just a thing you got to work through. And I take a lot of pride in being able to work through things. And for that, I don't necessarily get offended that easily. The only time that I do get offended is if something is intentionally malicious. Like, it was not done, like, as a mistake or lack of understanding. It was purely done to hurt. And I still have to deal with this on a daily basis with an asshole on Twitter who loves doing this, who just, I still, like, pop in from time to time. I still have this, it still worries me that I have to deal with it. And yeah, there's one thing to ignore, but again, intentionally malicious for at this point, no other reason than just to be so. That sucks. That hurts. There's nothing fun about that. But there were 3 key things that made me want to leave the company. And the timeline for that was, I made the decision. I'm going to recap this in the next one also. I sent an email on the 26th. I sent it the Sunday after TCGPlayer. TCGPlayer was March 24th. We got it. We were told, like, hey, no more vetting. This is the process to get on. I loved it, but at the same time, I also knew there was no fucking way for it to happen. And in that exact moment, I was like, I need to leave. I need to go. That also sucks. My own Icarus paradox. The thing that was the shocker, I mentioned a while back in a previous part, I didn't realize that there was something crippling the company. I didn't know that there was something crippling the company, and what was crippling the company, and this is also the Icarus paradox. Part of the investor conversation is if you're going to go into acquisition land, you need to really understand what the cost of the acquisitions are going to be. One of those costs was a 6-figure personal debt that the company was staked on that I didn't know about. Until suddenly the investors were, like, at risk. I had no clue. Who the fuck knows that? I know that, but, like, you've got multiple print runs. You've got boxes sold from past print runs to the tune of probably about 5,000 boxes. There's starter kits that were being printed, that were printed and sold. And then there's a $300,000 Kickstarter, again, that probably got, like, knocked to, like, 200, 220 after, like, taxes and fees and all of that. I don't know where the fuck this thing came from. I don't know where it came from. But suddenly, as the investor conversations were beginning, and, like, I started to see as, like, okay, we're not as cash positive as we thought. And, like, the questions were, like, I'm not sure how. 6 figures of debt that have just been there show up. Just been there. Thing to learn number 9. Plan and price your products so they can fund future products and not just pay for themselves. Now, I don't think that's what happened here. I've got my own kind of ideas, but I'm not going to go into that because that truly is like kind of a dick move speculation. I don't want to touch that. I really don't. That's even cruel that is intentionally malicious. But like, you've got all this product that was selling. It was selling up until day 2 July 2nd edition print 2, J2P2 as we call it. Everything was sold. You would think that there would be profit enough to like run a company to like move forward, plus a Kickstarter. So like, I assume like print runs were like paid for already. So again, that's why it baffled me that Invasion was like up front. Like, what the fuck? How the fuck did that happen? So I'd think that you would plan and price in such a way that like you would get enough profit to be able to like kind of fund future endeavors, or at least be confident in being able to pay your fucking staff. And I don't know how long it went, but like they only had like 5-6 releases every, one release a year. I can see that, but also they were minimal costs. Issues would have shown up like earlier. So the debt discovery, and I learned, I asked very directly what the number was, and I got my number, which was between like 150,000, and apparently like others have gotten different numbers. So, like, we're at the point of just blatant lying. Let's fucking call it what it is. What the fuck? And that leads to the second reason I left, which is the WIFM problem. WIIFM. What's in it for me? For me. And if you're thinking, that seems selfish, fuck you. We're going to talk. The TCGPlayer meeting was 9 months of a lot of back and forth, a lot of like promises, a lot of asking like the community every 3 months, hey, can you go send a bunch of things to show that there was in fact still interest? That was a lot of work. And then when we got it, after I knew number 1, the debt discovery, and then the next one I'm going to share, I knew those things already. This is spaced here for a reason. I already knew those things. So we get TCGPlayer, and the first thing in my mind, I got TCGPlayer. What the hell am I doing this for? Why? What was this all for? Like, if we were getting like this sales numbers, we were getting sales, like it was sales and partnerships and like these things. Like, we were working hard to try to make these things happen, and it was a lot of like communications with like people who were like, let's do a learn to play and open house, and like I'm going to ship things out to you, and like they're going to ship things out to you. I had no clue. I sacrificed pay. Not sacrificed. I delayed pay and delayed reimbursements under the impression that the forward progress that we were making in this company was going to go to an Invasion print run. And it turns out none of that seemed to be true. And it seemed to be going to this debt that I didn't know fucking existed. That's infuriating. That's fucking infuriating. I had no goddamn clue it existed. Debt, I expected some level of debt. A little bit. Not mortgage payment level. And I learned that about February as well. And I just stopped caring. February, I put out a weekly awareness that said it's going to be very foundational. I'm going to work on a lot of foundational things. And that was true. I was working on a lot of foundational things. I said, you're not going to see a lot of community engagement. But also in February, I just stopped caring. I really didn't. I didn't know what success meant. And I didn't know what it was making up for. I didn't know if getting a $2,000, we get a $2,000 sale, $3,000 sale, we get TCGPlayer, and I use that as leverage to get like $20,000, $30,000 POs from like Distro or something like that. I don't know if that's going to go towards Invasion. I don't know if that's going to help people get paid, because I was just now learning that people weren't getting fucking paid. I don't know if that actually goes towards the print run. I don't know where it goes. And I'm now actually sacrificing income that does matter. And I don't know why I'm sacrificing it. Again, delaying it. I don't know what I'm doing it for. I didn't care. I stopped caring. And I don't hold that against myself. And I'm not going to hold that against myself. And the reason for that is number 3. The third thing. I told you I don't get offended unless it's something intentional. And I framed these the way that I did for a reason. So let's talk about the moral of the story. this whole story. The third reason I left was because I discovered how much I had been being abused by passion. There were a couple of conversations that happened, again, as a part of the investor track, that I can't even say were reasonable. I mentioned that we all had the opportunity to bring in our salaries and do job descriptions and share salaries. I also mentioned that those job descriptions were way the hell under market. You're under market. And again, I understood. I took it and I was like, I can see the line of play there of, you're not proven and, they're taking a risk with us. So maybe we spend a little bit of time on a lower salary. We prove ourselves and then we push and then we in the first year, we negotiate forward after we've proven ourselves. I see that being a risk that both sides get to take. I see that. I saw that. So I was like, okay, I'll go a little under market. And remember, I'm at $1,500 a month on retainer still. That was the idea. It was let slip in a conversation that the undercutting of salary was not something that was inspired by the investor group. It was something that was inspired by us as a way to reduce the strain of the debt pickup that I just learned existed. Talk about abuse by passion. Abuse of generosity. Welcome to the ride. I wasn't expecting that the offer that I feel was a generous offer to work but not get paid. Seems pretty generous. But I didn't know that, undercutting my own salary for something that didn't exist, that wasn't something I was a part of. That wasn't something I don't even know if the company was a part of. But to offset something that I had no clue that I was trying to resolve, but salary was sacrificed for it. We were given up at cheaper value. It's fucking no. Just fucking no. Just no. That's intentionally malicious. I don't care what in the back of your dumb fuck mind is going on of this is going to be great for the company. That's intentionally malicious. Again, generosity, kindness, use and abuse are two-way streets. I have no problem using myself to try to help the company grow. I made decisions on my own. But abuse, knowing that I was doing what I was doing with very little intent, and also having that used against me later on we have an opportunity to get a full-time job from the things that we were doing well. How cool is that? And by the way, I'm going to sacrifice the salary that you've already been giving up. I'm going to sacrifice you so I can help this fucking mistake I made way the hell back here that I also didn't let you know you were fighting against. Words. This is also about the time that I learned that other people, I also learned people weren't getting paid. And I asked very directly in the debt pickup for this, in the debt pickup for that, hey, buddy, is back pay being included in this conversation? Because I'm not the only one who made this sacrifice. I'm not. Was back pay being included in the conversation of the debt pickup? No. It wasn't. Even if it gets acquired, even if millions of dollars of not we were going to get millions of dollars, but if this massive investment's going to show up, and it's not even trying to make up for the things that we did make up for, no. I'm sorry, but no. I hired on Lucas to help me out with social media stuff. And I had him do a lot of, there are a couple months where I do a lot of things, but I also had him in March where I didn't care and I had nothing for him. He basically had zero things to do in March. I'm paying for him out of pocket. Now. I've got a kid due in 2 weeks. I've given up $10,000 to $12,000 of stuff that I was kind of expecting back, at least somewhat shortly, including reimbursements out of my actual bank account. For Toronto and in reimbursements and for paying for Lucas for 5 months, literally since the beginning of his contract. And he was on a $500 a month retainer. So it's not a mind blowing, holy crap thing. It was a couple hours a week. It was a small, easy retainer. It wasn't anything big. I had nothing to do for him, but I paid him yesterday. I paid him out of my own pocket yesterday with money I shouldn't have. I do. Like I said, I got a couple of contracts here and there, but I made sure to pay him because I was like, this might take a little bit because I'm trying to figure out my own finances. And at the end of this, I I can't have this conversation and then not literally pay the guy, pay no matter what. Figure it out. And that leads to thing number 10. Thing number 10, and this is something that was also like kind of a notorious issue throughout the history of the company and things that I learned when I came into the company in January 2022 of like, I would say things and do things thinking it would mean something, and then I would get hit with the core community of, you have no idea how little this means because of how much damage has already been done to the relationship with people. This little piece of information is the one goddamn takeaway. If you're going to take anything away from this hour plus monstrosity that I'm creating, write this one down. And this applies to creators. It applies to fans. It applies to any level of excitement, interest, investment. If you're a business directly using labor to profit, no matter what it is, if it's like an offer, if you're a business directly using labor to profit, generosity needs to be temporary and with conditions. This is too far. I'm doing this for a lot of today. Sun's going down. My lighting is different. I'm annoyed that I'm doing something like this, but also I feel like kind of I needed to. Like all right, putting airing out the dirty laundry and whatnot. You take it for whatever you want to take it for, but at the end of the day, like I said, I spent a good deal of time figuring out, like, all right, how do we spin this into something that can be learned? Because a lot of people have been hurt in a lot of different ways from the temper tantrum era, and from bad decisions in bad ways. And I don't think anybody really takes it seriously because we sugarcoat and we hide things, and we don't call things what they are out of, we'll call it respect, fear. I don't know. But I've been struggling a lot because I tried to take a break from decks and drafts so I can go be the change that I wanted to be, and I felt that I did a pretty decent job at that. I'm proud of the things that I did for Genesis, and I want everybody who was a part and put in a lot of effort to be proud of what they did. And I'm sad that the final thing, I don't know if that's going to see the light of day. I have no clue. But I'm sad at how it all went down, but it's also kind of important to be like, hey, this is things that people suffered in a lot of ways, and there are things to take from this so it doesn't happen again. And also, we can be better if we just don't sugarcoat, just don't hide and let the internet come up with their own random speculations of things. And like I said, I'm keeping certain details away out of, I don't even know what the fuck I'm respecting anymore, but I'm still going to do a little bit of that. And then take us somewhere. Part of the reason for this is I skipped anger. Anger is usually a thing that like helps you kind of snap into a moment of like depression and acceptance if you're going to play the grief game. It is a thing that like you let it out, and then that gives you a chance to kind of reflect. I skipped that phase. I haven't skipped that in a long goddamn time. The last time that I went straight to rage for something that was intentionally malicious and targeted at abusing other people, and I was a part of that. The last time was at a time where I was suicidal. It was with a job that I should not have been given, where we were all taken advantage of in the worst goddamn ways, and then left hung out to dry in the process. And if anything, in a weird subconscious way, this may be triggering that, because I'm going to tell you right now, this story gets worse, and that blows my mind that this gets worse. Especially here. I made the decision on 3/24 to end my relationship with Haunted Castle Gaming effective April 1st. So basically, like, end of the month, I am done. The end. That's it. The end. And we move on. I move on. Somebody moves on. I don't care. Moved on. I sent an email over to Asa the same day as my baby shower, which I got a little bit into trouble for focusing pretty heavily on baby shower because this thing has consumed me. It has consumed me in something that I'm just going to call workforce trauma for lack of better reason. And if you know me more, if you know me personally, you know the darker history behind that. We're not going to get into it here. But I did during my baby shower, and during that baby shower, I also learned what I've been putting at risk, because our friends, our family, Family by which I mean friends. I'm not close with my actual family. Family by which I mean friends, but like our little community of the me and Sam and and the Buffy, the Elizabeth Azalea, our daughter. They came to our baby shower in force, and it was cool. And they took phenomenal care of us as far as like things they gifted and stuff like that. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve any of you. I have thrown between things that I do for hobbies and things that I've done, just losing my mind trying to find, like paying work and even the last months where I wasn't getting paid, of like, I'm doing all of this work still. And then I've got to kind of I've got to do extra things elsewhere to make up for the fact that I'm not getting paid for this. I gave up a lot of personal relationships for this, or at least I thought I was giving up a lot of personal relationships for this, and that was wrong. I was wrong on that, and that was equally painful. That was another one of my follies of this amazing group of people who showed up to our baby shower. Just, I don't deserve any of them. I still don't feel that way. But I sent the email the same day, and it wasn't nice. And then we chatted on the 27th. And on the 27th is when I learned that Asa has also made the decision. So like I said at the very beginning, I don't necessarily know if maybe I was an impact in this, but I was leaving, and then the next day Asa and I chatting, he's like, I think I'm shutting this down too. Part of me wasn't necessarily surprised. Also, part of me didn't care. Again, I was beyond care of what happened. That was over. But it was ironic. It was ironic. And after an hour and like 20 minutes, the company was literally on the verge of cake or death. We could have gotten acquired, and we could have had like TCGPlayer and a run, and we might have had a really serious, solid, amazing path forward. Or we chose death. Kind of wild. And it blew my mind. There were a lot of things that went well. The recapping from ages fucking back. We had stores coming in. We had these pockets of growth. We had TCGPlayer. We had investors looking at us and saying, hey, this was awesome. We had people who were looking our way organically, and we were getting little sales and little pockets here and there. We were getting people in a funnel, and things were moving forward. That was very, very cool. And it's all things that if we weren't crippled, if it was all actually going towards the forward progression of this company, we probably could have done something with it. But instead, we had this random thing that held us back. And it's not the only thing that was doing damage, mind you. The weird relationships we had with the printing, the weird relationships we had with distro, my God. The fact that we got distro contracts, but they already had product they were trying to liquidate. They were like, are you kidding? I would get them. I was like, hey, we got a distro contract. Awesome. We can sell some product. No, they already have some. Like, we made $0. At this stage? So many little sins of the past just kept creeping in. And then naturally there was the conversation around Asa going bankrupt. This was a loan where the company was attached to it as collateral, meaning trademark was. So the company was going to go under. If it was going to go bankrupt, the company was going to go under with it. So that was at risk. These are new things. But additionally, also just to make it worse, when it came to the investor conversation, we also learned that there was no path for most of us. They weren't interested. This is speculative because I don't entirely know. This is I both heard it directly from Asa as well as kind of the grapevine a little bit. But there was no real plan. The investors didn't really care about the game, and they definitely didn't care about me. There was no path forward for me. No matter what happened, there was no way in fucking hell I was actually getting this kind of full-time job that I had been putting a little effort into trying to make happen. No, that wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. So when I heard about the closure, the first thing out of my head, was, oh no, we succeeded. Take all those things that we did. There were new players who were buying in. There were new stores who were buying in. Some bought in big. There were all these partner relationships. In 9 months with TCGPlayer meant nothing. So I was pissed. But also I had animosity towards the community. And I was pissed at the Genesis community as well. And that's something that I'm appreciating what kind of really was going on. But also, I was like, we put in a lot. I put in a lot to try to like appease them. And things that like we had like a store championship series. We were trying to like trickle in spoiler series. We were trying to do all these things to like get them engaged and get them excited and be like, these are the types of things that normal communities get excited about. And it never felt like it was anything meaningful. It never led anywhere meaningful. Nobody talked about it afterwards. Half the people who were like really big gung-ho people, like it wasn't even an acknowledgement of like that we even said anything. It was all like, okay, and then nothing. And that sucked. And there's more to that story that is not me, that it's not me saying like the community is garbage or anything like that. There's a little bit more to that, which is basically, it kind of continues the realm of like, we really abandoned them hard, and we set a behavior of abandonment and just a lack of communication. And these little moments didn't mean anything because the community and members of the community had been putting in so much already, and those were also like, it was like reciprocation was an inconvenience, and that was just the behavior. That was the habit that we had put forward. So of course, when we do something cool and interesting and exciting, that core group, the ones that we would rely on, is like even during like Kickstarter growth and like help us grow, it makes perfect sense. They're like, okay, what's next? Sucked. The other thing that I was worried about when I heard about the announcement was my own fears about the day that it would happen. Because I knew that I was already the center of communication. That was already a big goddamn problem. I had been a punching bag multiple times. And I knew that I was going to be a punching bag again. Like I knew we were going to announce on Monday. We ultimately announced on Tuesday. I think we announced on Tuesday. I forgot which day it was. But I knew I was in for a day of hell, of a lot of conversations, a lot of people, like, for XYZ reason, they were going to reach out to me. Thankfully, I was able to communicate those, because at the time that people were learning about the end of Genesis, the developer community came together to try to figure out, like, the next steps for the game, and we're going to talk about that later. The next steps for the game, and one of the things I brought up, because they brought me in, which was an honor, was I was worried about what was going to happen to me. I'm terrified of this conversation. And a couple individuals stepped up to be shock absorbers. And they literally said, like, we will help you run the biggest part of this, because we know that Asad is not going to step in front. We know that the company is just going to put out a post, and we're going to put out a thing, and then that's going to be it. And whoever with the company, whoever has a connection, they're going to be the ones who are left to rot. They're going to be the ones who are left to deal with all of this. We all knew that. So for this, I want to give out a special thank you to Will K. This human being, the next game that Will is a part of should be honored to have him. The passion and excitement of this individual is, he did more than he should have to the nth degree, and he was spat on multiple times as a result. I don't even fucking know why. I feel the worst for Will, but I'm also thankful because he was one of the few people who reached out to me directly and said, I have your back. I have your back. We made the announcement on 4/4. It was a post. I looked at the copy on Monday, and I put out an ultimatum even, of like, you're going to do this or I'm going to do this. I got the copy on Monday. I'm pretty sure we released it Tuesday morning. And I looked at it and I hated it. I tried so hard and came so far. It was like, this was on him. It was like he did it himself, and there was so much of the community that desperately, like, they wanted to help, and we all tried to help, and all we needed was goddamn information. If only we had the kind of the right things that we knew, we could have acted. We could have figured things out. My take on the announcement was, I was offered to be like, if there are things that you feel should be added, please let me know, or feel free to add them and we can go from there. And I read the thing. I was like, no. These are the words that you chose. And it's like, shucks. No. I let it go as it does. We went out to the community. There was an immediate ETL exploring the library. It's on the website. It's on the YouTube channel. You can still see it. And it was one of the things that inspired Temper Tantrum 2, because there was, throughout this entire adventure, there was always the talk that, of integrity and the kindness and just the warm-heartedness of the individual, and the humility of knowing when you were wrong. And that's the thing, because had we known the things that were going wrong, we could have done better as a community. We could have done better as a staff. We would have been fine. We would have made it out of this. We would have been able to plan. But instead, none of that happened. And it was just a fetal position. And those of us who got in front and took that chance with the company to be in front of the community to really try to help it grow, we were the ones who had to start taking bullets. And we took bullets. And that leads to thing number 11. It's a dark thing. Humility, integrity. It doesn't mean shit behind closed doors. The community response is what you would expect, or most people expect. There's a lot of anger, sadness, confusion, concern, what the hell. And then we got a surge of interest, right? We had a couple creators who made some, kind of some download things of, hey, the game's over. And then we started seeing a bunch of people pop into the Discord, people who had left the Discord, probably because of me. I'm gonna own some of that. Because we didn't exactly agree and nobody wanted to fucking talk. Basic conversations. I'm happy to be open. You can fucking talk to me. Okay. Anyway. But naturally, we got a little bit of a surge of interest, and the thrill of speculation, right? The what happened? Oh my god! And naturally, some of it was like, oh, it was like an homage to like, oh, what a great game. No, that's not what it is. It's the joys of the car crash. That's what everybody loves to see, a good car crash. Everybody pops in the Discord server to watch the aftermath of the drama and the insanity, and that's exactly what we got. In the middle of it, there were a core group of us, or a couple of us, myself, and then, some of the other members like the dev team, people who were like big, in front of the community, who knew things and people knew new things. We were all fronting a batch of insanity. And that's going to lead to thing number 12. And this is more for fans. And this is again, abuse by passion stuff. If you're taking bullets for a company, they're not worth taking bullets for. They're not. I take a lot of pride. There are a lot of people who didn't agree with me about some of the things that I was doing, the reasons that I was doing them. But I take a lot of pride in being able to talk through them. I said a while back, like, feedback is a way to kind of probe better information. I had no problem taking feedback and then kind of probing that to answers that led into decent things going forward. It's actually kind of how sketch rares happen, to be honest. For those who know what Invasion was supposed to bring. I have no problem. Like, as part of me wanting to be like converse and have real conversations, I would hope that in return that would be reciprocated from people, and that's just not how the internet works. But also, like, if a company unless it's like your specific job, and by the way, PR was not my job. It's not a thing. But if an announcement like closing the company is still met with the only individuals who were like enough of part of the community are the ones who have to kind of speak for everything, including individuals who didn't like work or never had like a paycheck or anything like that. None of those things, you shouldn't take them. And the company isn't worth it. They're not. But that's the issues that we had. In the middle of all the insanity, there were revival efforts, and I'm going to skip those for the last part of this, which is episode 7. I'm going to skip those specifically, but there are a lot of people who are talking about revival. I even kind of jumped in a little bit with things like Project Nisei and all of those things. I talked a little bit about them. I try to help kind of through that process. But I want to take a moment and talk about the next 36 hours after the announcement. I've never thought I would experience this. And this probably led to where I am now, where I'm like, I feel it's a story worth telling, and worth knowing and having people know and understand. And it's not deserving of the ride into the sunset that it's currently getting. For the next 36 hours, and I'm only going to speak to my experience here. Other people probably had something maybe similar. I can't speak for what their journeys were, so I'm just going to share with you what happened to me. And I told you this story gets worse. For the next 36 hours, this was a barrage from every angle. What happened? How long did people know? Who knew what and when? What led to all of this? We were doing great. And the most important one, and the one that gets really wild, how much would it cost to buy the company and the IP? And that made it really weird because there were probably easier answers to that, but I even just recently learned that attached to this IP is a 6-figure debt. So I'm like, all right, I want to field these. There's like, do I want to send these over to Osid? Do I want to send these over to him? But he's proven that he's not going to talk about like past debt things, and he's hiding certain information about the current state of the company. So if somebody's genuinely interested in buying the thing, does it make sense? Is like that worth the risk? And it's people who like I know and I like. I'm like, is this worth the risk to like go and like have them get surprised? I'm like, I want to make a commitment to something, and then like, oopsie, there's $100,000 plus more dollars you gotta spend. I got it in every social media channel that I existed in: Facebook, Discord, Twitter, all of it, and it was constant, over and over. And there was like I could pass things along, but I was worried to do so. And we didn't exactly have a great line for this. But there was another issue, and that was the Invasion dilemma. In the announcement, there was the announcement that Invasion was going to get released as a print and play. That was the plan, because it was done. It was done. And like we wanted to get it out there because it was worth it. It was a great set. It was worth it. It's worth getting it out there. In the middle of the Barrage, and we were figuring out like what the plans were. Like I was working on getting the cards into like a print and play kind of format, which is like a whole adventure. Like I was getting ready to put it out there, into something that was printable. In the middle of the Barrage of insanity of 36 hours, a message comes through that says, "Don't release anything about Invasion. Don't release anything." I shared one piece of art. I don't care. It was phenomenal. The idea around this, the line of play, was to protect us from the copyright holders. Again, I mentioned about like bankruptcy, and it was a loan that was tied to it was tied to like the company, the trademark. So like if the bank suddenly owns it, there could be like an integrity issue, and we could have a whole bunch of problem in releasing something that wasn't ours anymore to release. All right, so it makes sense. Assuming we were post bankruptcy, but naturally there were some immediate follow-ups because we're like a day in. We're like a day into this thing. So the questions that I responded back with, and again, barrage of things because we made it public that we're releasing this thing. And this is also like, we're learning that artists weren't getting paid for everything. So, and some of the artists wanted to put things out that they did in Invasion in their portfolio, and they fucking should. They wanted to. So I was like, okay, do you still own the copyright? If that's the case, then why the hell, like the bank doesn't give two shits to release a TCG. We're not going to have a Scotiabank presents Genesis Battle of Champions. That's not a thing. So it's like, does somebody else own the copyright? Do we still do? Does Haunted Castle still? Is Haunted Castle still in your name and you're in like all that? And if that's the case, then what exactly is stopping you? What is the actual concern for putting something? And if it's a concern, if the relevant concern is like buyers are coming and approaching and saying that, maybe we want to buy this, then it makes perfect sense, right? That Invasion is something that could be released, that could be a moneymaker, that could be a way to kind of restart your position into the industry. If like Genesis is going to get revived, we're going to release Invasion. It makes perfect sense to not release the thing because that does take away from kind of that initial way to recoup some of that expenses if the thing got bought. But also, there was the artist problem with artists not being paid. There was some of the art that wasn't actually owned by Haunted Castle. What was it? And do we have a chance to release it? And, that's a shaky line, right? That's not a line we don't go into. So I asked, on top of those other questions of like owning copyright and whatnot, I asked, can we at least spoil some cards from the artists who we have not spoiled any work from yet? Marion Crinier was one of the original one. Like she's, I feel for her. Her work's great. She had a whole series. Can we at least spoil something? So that way those artists can put things on their pages? Crickets. For 36 hours, it was a barrage of everything. People are taking bullets for this, and I'm taking a shit ton of bullets as well. And I'm like, and it's just like, pass me on anybody who wants to buy the company, and then nothing, then nothing. Again, two-way goddamn street. You have to at least appreciate. I don't care how curled up into a goddamn fetal fucking ball you are. You have to appreciate what your team, your staff, your core team are doing to protect you right now, and you have to give us goddamn something. But the lack of yes or no question, you can't even give me yes or no responses to basic goddamn questions. That was too much stress. That was too much. So I had a feeling that I hadn't had in a very long time, and that was the feeling of helplessness. And that led to a breakdown 2 weeks ago. I didn't think I would ever have one of those. And what is unfortunate and also kind of good is that it happened in front of my wife. It was a very late night, and I just lost it. I couldn't anymore. And there was a piece of information kind of regarding the investment aspect, and I don't quite want to share that one yet. Maybe that might come up. But it was another one of those things of like, we did so many things right, and this was even another thing that we did right. This was another sign of how well we were actually doing. And just the slaps in the face at the end of it all, and including being the center of fucking attention and getting no even basic information responses. I get that it's fucking hard, but if you're going to make those decisions, you have to know that you need to fucking stand the fuck out there and you go down with a goddamn ship. And that isn't a thing that happened. So I was helpless. I felt helpless. And I lost it. And I want to give a very special thank you to my wife, who is 9 months pregnant. And I was shielding her from a lot of this for the last couple of months because she had that to deal with. And I have that to deal with, but she had that to deal with. She was in the middle of it all. She was in the middle of it all. And God love her for being able to calm me down and just listen and deal, knowing she couldn't do anything. There was no stopping this. There's no stopping this. So the next morning I said goodbye to the game, the company, to everything that had a login, as well as the community. I left the Discords, I left everything. And that leads to the final thing to learn. And that's number 12. Businesses and their communities form a partnership. And that partnership, they owe each other. They do, whether they like it or not. Communities owe something to the business that they love, and companies owe something to the communities that love them. That's it. There's nothing around that. And it's not necessarily that it has to be like, a one-to-one relationship, kind of reciprocal thing, but there's a matter of respect that both sides should share between how they both build each other up, and that wasn't really respected from the beginning. I mentioned animosity towards the community for like, man, what else do we need to do in order to get you to even acknowledge us? And I didn't appreciate how many sins from the past basically said, we don't really care about your opinion. And I didn't really respect that for what it was, and that sucked. So, like, leaving the community, it hurt, but it also didn't. But also, like, it's important to understand with this story, like, this is more than a game to people. Like, any game that's just like, it's just a game. This is more than a game. It's the people that we know and the things that we go through and the ways that it affects kind of, what we know about our abilities and the time, the effort, the energy that we put in, the relationships that we put trust in, and the betrayal and all of that. Genesis wasn't quite a family. It hadn't quite reached that point yet, but I felt it could have. So as I end this little piece, there's one more part, which is going to be a message directly to the revival efforts. But as far as kind of this story and this tale of my journey, this is where it ends. And I would like to end this on the things that I wish I did. Number 1 is I wish that I was better at asking for help surrounding the topic of asking for help. There were things that I definitely needed help on, from just like the amount of hours that something took, or, any of those. Like there were times where I really I didn't know what the direction was, and I didn't know where to go, and I didn't have anywhere to go. And I wish I asked the community. I wish I asked people who offered regularly. I wish there were better thought. I also wish that I harbored better communication without becoming the only channel for it. Oh God, what a fucking mistake that was. I wasn't PR, that wasn't my job. Head of marketing, like being the marketing guy doesn't mean you put yourself in the Discord community and you're supposed to be the one taking bullets. You're supposed to be the one who centers everything. Like that's why you kind of have community managers and social media managers for these things. And I knew like the goal was harboring communication. I wish that I had a better channel that was not just like, hey, just talk to me and then I'll talk to the team. I should have done something different. Should have done something scalable that didn't put so much on me, because by the end of this thing, I literally wanted to die. Number 3, I wish that I pushed on the real estate of the business. I wish that I really asked the questions like, all right, there are concerns, but like, is there, I wish that I had like I wish that I saw the flags and pushed on them. Again, abuse by passion. You ignore things. You become kind of an echo chamber. When you think you have so much confidence in something that the things that are like going awry and the things that could disrupt that are, having them called out is just, well, how dare they? That's nothing compared to that's nothing compared to like the positives of this thing. And I think like the biggest mistake, oddly, was leaving the Discord. That's something small under normal circumstances, but that betrayal to the community, that disconnect led to so many other things. And it also was a flag of like staying kind of in a safe space from a company perspective. And I should have read into that. And I wish that I pushed more, because I would have been able to do different things. I would have been able to have like different plans. I would have pushed different initiatives. I would have reached out differently. But most importantly, and this is going to be the final part of this, is I wish that I could have done number 4. So thank you all for joining me on this long goddamn journey and listening and all of those things. And I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts and what you knew, and I'm happy to answer to a point. But I wish that I understood, and I wish that I did number 4, which is I wish I knew when to leave. I should have left a long time ago. At the very start of what I has now basically become a feature film, I had mentioned that there were revival efforts that have made themselves public on the official website. I don't know the details. I genuinely don't know the details. Removing yourself from the community and saying bye. There was a point where I wanted to help out, and then things just kind of got worse. And then, being kind of abandoned and left hung out to dry. I didn't want any part of it. And I think that, there was a little group that probably knew I could have helped, but, maybe they respected that I really just needed to go. And I put out a note that's like, I just need to go and let this go whatever direction it wants. But there's a revival group, and I want to give them a very direct message. And the first thing I want to say is, and I'm going to say this actually also at the end, is I do wish you luck. I love this project. I love this project. Everything behind it, not so much. A lot of things behind it, not so much. In the journey of how we got to where we were. But I would love to see you take this in the direction that we were kind of heading, and show the world what this was capable of doing. Osset's creation is phenomenal, and the big strategy of it is kind of surreal. It's impressive. He did something kind of great. And I would ask in this that you respect what the game was capable of doing. Not just what you might want it to be, not just looking back and because I know there was a group that like tried and basically it was just a clusterfuck of here are the things we didn't like and let's just fix those things, and like that was going to mean something, and that those efforts fizzled in hilarity in Wile E. Coyote fashion. But whatever this group is that seems to have like a very clear and a very like intentional kind of business aspect of things, appreciate that there was market reach outside of the TCG space. It's different. That was one of its big differentiators, is that we can break outside of TCG land. The other differentiator that worked really well, and I would ask the same of you, is that ironically, business integrity and industry knowledge got us a lot further than even the game quality and game vision. We had a lot of people who were wowed by the fact that we understood their issues of things like product being left on the shelf and product churn and like customer acquisition, their own customer acquisition, and providing knowledge to their teams so that way they can share with customers. Like there are a lot of people who were very surprised that we respected that proactively. I would ask that you do the same. I don't know what your goals are as far as like, is this going to be monetized or not, but I ask you to do the same. If that's the angle that you want to take, it did more good than you might realize. The next thing I would ask is to be a business first. I did the whole temper tantrum era because people don't recognize this thing becomes a business. And Haunted Castle is no different. But people are going to find their own enjoyment with the game. Your existence is proof of this. Multiple communities try to come and fix this and revive it is proof that people are going to find their own enjoyment with the game. We didn't say here's how to save this thing. They did it on their own. So like if the community is comfortable enough, especially like the long-standing ones, the long-standing loyal community, they've got this. Be a business. Focus on that part so people don't get screwed. and you don't start abusing generosity and the excitement and the passion of others. And as far as that long-standing loyal community, I ask that you partner with them. Don't lean on them. Don't treat them like a crutch. So many people reached out throughout this entire adventure and said, we want to help with XYZ. We want to help with QA. We'd love to help with community writing, and we want to help with all these things. And so often we kind of turned them down or just didn't go anywhere with it. That was a grand mistake. Partner with them. That's a two-way relationship. Think about ways to reciprocate. It doesn't necessarily have to be like monetary. It can be an appreciation, but figure out what that line is. Figure out what they're willing to do, and then do it. But don't lean on them as a crutch. Don't treat them like they're going to be the thing that they're going to be like the sole reason that you're able to succeed. They're not. They aren't. That isn't true of any game. Third, if you can, and this is a little selfish, take care of the people who got screwed. There are artists who don't get to show off their work, who didn't get paid for what they had. They put in extra time and effort, and that meant nothing in the end. And there are people who, had kind of part ownership who were left just out of the loop of everything. And it's led to whatever this is. It's led to enough confidence that whatever this group is wants to put something towards it. Please try to make sure that they're taken care of. And I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't appreciate a little bit my way as well. I would. Like I said, I'm kind of proud of what I did. But I wouldn't mind it. But please keep that in your mind as the thing revives. I know for some cases, like the developers are probably just going to be happy that their work is out there, but they were offered more and they deserve more. They did something great. A lot of people did something great. And again, I do wish you luck. I'll be looking out, and I've already offered it up of minor consultations of here are the things that we learned that we're doing well, and here are some plans, and I'm more than happy to go that extent, but no more. I'm not gonna be a part of the company or whatever this is. It's not a thing. I need to be done. I need to be done. I've learned my lessons, and I've done what I want to do. And at the end of the day, as hard as this has been, I need to be able to walk away and be proud of that. Maybe even that's just internally. But as far as everything else, I definitely put a lot on the failings of the company in the past, but the game, the project itself, deserves to succeed. And anybody who has gotten this far, who has not played or wasn't interested in Genesis and was just curious to hear all of the drama, take a good, hard look at Genesis Battle of Champions, what it was doing, what it did towards the end, and how it can, under the right leadership, under the right direction, under the right strategy, it can do something that no other game is capable of doing. And that's bring every facet of stuff together, every genre. It was pretty goddamn brilliant. Cheers to the efforts. And for me, to the end of this journey. This will be the last video that I do. This will be the last public statement that I make about my time with Genesis. This has to be done. I have to go be a dad. I'm excited to be a dad. And that's where we end it. Cheers, everybody. And thank you for listening.